Well, this is Dr. Stan here at Radio Liberty, coming to you from the hills overlooking beautiful and picturesque Monterey Bay, and bringing you the news behind the news, the story behind the story. Hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at, that illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the survival of Christian civilization, it's going to be reality and not illusion or delusion that will determine what the future will bring. And this evening I've asked Dr. David Kennedy to be with us. Dr. Kennedy is a retired dentist who's written and lectured and traveled and spoken extensively about the danger of water fluoridation. And of course he's been ridiculed for that. Only certainly recently, Harvard University recently published a paper pointing out the dangers of water fluoridation. So without further ado, David Kennedy, you pick up the story and tell us what's really going on, what's new as far as this massive program to poison the people of America. I should point out that is it true that most countries in Europe will not allow water fluoridation, or do they have fluoridation over there?
Only Southern Ireland.
Only Southern Ireland. They hate the Irish. You pick up the story, David.
Well, Dr. Stan, thank you for having me on, first off, and yes, there's gobs of data showing that fluoride, like lead and mercury and a number of other things, damage the brains of the children. And so the co-author in the article you were talking about, Choi et al., was talking about chemical brain drain. Is that if you want your country to survive in the 21st century and lead the world as we have in the last 2.5 centuries, then you cannot damage the brains of the population, especially the children, and that's what we're doing. We're doing it with food additives, we're doing it with mercury fillings, and we're doing it by putting chemicals in the water that are demonstrably harmful to the brains of the children.
And is this actually what the gentleman from Harvard actually said in this article?
It's actually a lady, but yes, that she basically took a bunch of studies, 37, I think she started with, and then all the ones that were kind of weak and not well controlled, she eliminated those and ended up with about 25. And then she showed that, and she took the best of the information that we have, and that's how science is, and showed that there was a very regular incremental decrease in IQ with increasing levels of exposure to fluoride.
A decreased level of IQ with exposure to fluoride, and why are we hearing about this?
Well, the people that are promoting fluoride in our water supply absolutely, utterly refuse to address any of the science involved. Fluoride is a very poisonous substance. If you don't believe me, open up Webster's dictionary. It says a powerful protoplasmic poison, and we're protoplasm, so it says it's a powerful poison for humans, and that it's no different than all the rest of the things that we've discovered in the last century. That lead was damaging the children, and mercury was damaging the children, and pesticides were damaging the children. But industry and people that have the stuff to get rid of, or who profit from making the stuff, immediately start cranking out all these phony baloney studies. They say, it's no different than cigarettes, or, smoking can be harmful to you. Oh, no, it's not. We've got this study that was done by R.J. Reynolds that says it's not. So it goes on and on and on. Is it they say, we say, but there's no question if you give a rat 1 part per million fluoride, it has damage to its brain.
Well, let me just point out, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to verify this, if you have a computer, go up on Google and just write in, Harvard study shows that certainly fluoride damages the brain of children. Now, we'll actually get you the exact title and the author here as we go into this, but you fortunately, if you have the access to the Internet, I found the article today, simply Harvard study shows damage to the brain, and of course it's much more prevalent against the black, and and the tragedy is it leads to social irresponsibility, which is why almost 40% of all the people in federal prison today are black, because of course of the effects of the fluoride on their minds. David, you're right. David, you're right ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Stan, I don't know why it has to take so long for very well done, peer-reviewed scientific information to move into the common knowledge of our country, is that whenever something bad is found out about something that's common, such as lead in gasoline or mercury in fillings or fluoride in water, that they crank out the public relations machine that say, oh, those are bad scientists, or those are foolish people that think conspiracy is happening. No. If you damage a rat with 1 part per million, you're damaging children with 1 part per million. I'm sorry, that's how that works. And actually, a rat takes about 20 parts per million, causes the same amount of damage. But, why are we arguing about this? Because in our society, is it people that have a vested interest in the status quo use denial and obfuscation and phony baloney studies and their money to stir the pot and make the public confused. And thank you for trying to straighten them out. As a physician and as a dentist, the science is clear. Is that there is no issue. There are no questions. Put the stuff in the water and you damage whoever drinks that water. And that people say, oh, I'll drink bottled water. Well, it's in the bottled water. It's in the beer. You can't get it out. It's a very, very small poisonous molecule that when you put it in the water, it goes right through your reverse osmosis. It comes right through the charcoal filters. It is a terribly noxious substance, and you can't get rid of it. What are you going to do with your shower? You can't put a whole house filter. I've tried. I've got thousands of dollars invested in a system that completely fails after about 15,000 gallons. Well, 15,000 gallons in an average house will go through that in 3 months.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment. And our guest, of course, is David Kennedy, Dr. David Kennedy, who's pointing out that there's this recent study out of Harvard that's basically a cumulative analysis of some 25 studies, and they all come to pretty much the same conclusion, that fluoride damages the brain. Certainly if you take a rat and you give it of fluoride, sodium fluoride in minuscule amounts, it'll damage the brain in rats. It'll damage the brains of children. So there are all sorts of studies where they compare children who actually drink fluoridated water and don't, and the IQ is much lower when they drink the fluoridated water. David, you go right ahead with your story.
Yeah, well, the CHOICE study was actually a kind of a pivotal point in the argument, if you will. There really is no argument, but that it goes on and on. That they basically took a whole bunch of studies, and I'm going to get you the number before the program's over, and they analyzed them, and they basically showed that if there's an exposure to fluoride in the drinking water, especially in malnourished children, that there is a measurable decrease in the intelligence of that child. Well, there's a lot of other things going on. It's not just about whether or not they have trouble in school. It's a lot of other problems. The joints and the thyroid. The obesity problem you hear everybody talking about. Well, it has to do with the fact that we're basically swallowing a milligram, and the dentist say, oh, that's just a little tiny bit. No, a milligram is a whole lot. And that, they say, oh, it's a little tiny bit, but it's not. It's a whole lot. And so when you take into your body a milligram of a poison, then it basically damages your body milligrams worth. If you took 2, it'd be. So what if you happen to be a baby? You take into your body a liter of water every day in the form of formula. If you're a bottle-fed baby, you're drinking your weight in water every 3 to 4 days. Well, you figure that out. What if you were a big guy like me? I weigh 100 kilograms. And so if I were to drink 100 kilograms of water every 3 to 4 days, look at the dose. And that's what they absolutely, utterly refuse to do, is they will not consider the exposure, total exposure from water for an infant. And then there's the other aspect, total exposure from from all sources. And so you've got your friendly dentist putting mercury fillings, not mercury fillings in, but plastic fillings in that leak fluoride. That you've got your school nurse painting the children with 25 to 50,000 parts per million fluoride sealants that basically leak or varnish that leaks fluoride into that child's saliva and goes right down the throat and into the system and into the brain. So you've got the school rinse program where you've got the school nurse or the teacher dispensing a deadly poison in a little capsule or a little jar there. You're supposed to swish it around and spit it out, and they wonder why the kids can't learn to read and write. I mean, I went to a one-room schoolhouse. There was no child in that schoolhouse that could not read and write. And I know because at every day you had to stand up and you had to read a passage of, see Jane run, see Dick run, yada, yada, yada. And so we could all learn to read and write, but we were on well water. We didn't have silico fluoride added to our water supply. And that's the other half of the story. It's not fluoride. It's silico fluoride that's added to 91% of the water supplies in the United States. 91%. And that the others have sodium silico fluoride, which is, you can make it from silico fluoride, and they do it to make a dry feed as opposed to a wet feed. But I'm getting technical here. The issue is there's no moral reason why any government on this planet should be dosing the citizens of the country with a chemical that's known to harm people. And that you can have all the dentists in the world claiming, oh, it's safe and effective and blah, 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 but ask them for the data.
And I think the scientific studies are there. And fortunately, we have the Internet. You can go up on the Internet, and you'll find conflicting approaches. But I said you'll find a great deal of information to verify exactly what Dr. David Kennedy is saying. And I can tell you that I've been to the scientific literature on this subject, and basically there's no question at all. We're poisoning our children and destroying their minds and your grandchildren. And if you're not going to look into this, then, of course, when the complications come up down the road, why, of course, you have nobody to blame but yourself. Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Go right ahead, David.
Yeah, well, the Choi identified 27 studies out of more than 35 that were eligible, and that they were ones that he controlled for other things that are known to harm children's brains, like the arsenic and lead, and what's interesting is even the educational level of the parents, and that if the parents don't take care of the children and pay attention to them and help them raise their educational standards, and there's a harm there. And so they identified all those things as best they could, and these are Chinese studies. Why? Because in the United States we don't care. We ignore all this data. We have huge computers and gobs of data, and that you call up your state and ask them where's their fluoride in the water supply, and they'll say we don't know. You could call up the Department of Endemic Disease Control in China, and they can tell you every well in every community. And people have individual wells, so they got the level of fluoride measured at the person's house. And so why don't we care? Is because it would be harmful to the industries that are polluting our country with fluoride. And that there are industries that leak fluoride, and that they are, places like cracking columns for gasoline, cement factories, brick factories, kilns that fire glazes and materials like that. Welders often end up fluoride poisoned because of the flux. That fluoride is a very useful element. It is a powerful substance that you can use in pharmaceuticals. The post office workers that they feared were exposed to anthrax were given an antibiotic. It's a fluoroquinone. Whenever you hear fluoro, like fluoroquinone, Cipro, that they had taken it for over a month. If you read the package insert, it says take it for no more than 1 week or consult your physician. So they prescribed it for 3 or 4 months, and these people became crippled. Why? Because there's a huge dose of fluoride with pharmaceuticals. Almost all of your psychoactive pharmaceuticals contain large amounts of fluoride. If you go to a hospital, you're going to get a general anesthetic. The halothane, fluorothane, those all contain fluoride. There are even examples of children that had some horrible birth defect at birth, and then they had a general anesthetic so they could correct the cardiovascular problem or whatever it was, and that they ended up with dental fluorosis as they matured into a young adult because of the fluoride coming out of their bones. So there's no question that there's a huge amount of fluoride in our society. The issue is, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have saved the child's life. I'm saying that there's no reason for tankers and ships to come from Mexico, China, Japan, Florida, Belgium, all over the world, bringing this horrible substance to put in our water supply. That's the problem. Not the fact that we're exposed to fluoride from a lot of other different sources. The problem is we've got a government program to help industry dispose of their excess fluoride. And that's the problem, is because they're not going to say, oh, well, we're sorry, we were wrong, and we're going to quit doing this. No, they've got a job. They're going to go ahead and earn their salary and their nice retirement pay and all that, continue to do the job that you're paying them to do.
But I think the important thing is, David, that basically if you work for the government and you know what you're doing, you don't dare speak out. I know I've talked to Betty Martini, as she's been... that's on aspartame, but I've talked to other people who certainly who have been working with this fluoride issue, and basically, I mean, the government employees are afraid to tell. They know that the fluoride is poisoning, but if they actually come forward and reveal this, they can lose their job and their pension and come under tremendous pressure. Is that true?
Many already have, and but they sleep better at night. Is that courage is a rare commodity. It is what made this country strong in the first place. Is what's lacking today, is that courage comes from the heart. It comes from within. And it says, I'm doing right because I believe in my country. I believe in doing right. And that if you don't have courage, if you have a spaghetti heart that quivers and shakes when somebody says, oh, I'm going to report you, then you go ahead and destroy the country that has made you the person you are today. And that's what's happening. Is the public health department. I was at a meeting. I went across the United States to talk to the hygienist, the dental hygienist of Maine. And at the annual meeting there in Augusta, Maine, one of the ladies putting the meeting on, she asked just a rhetorical question. How many people in this room work or have worked for the United States Public Health Service? 25% of the ladies in that room, and there were only two men, but 25% of them had worked or do work for the United States Public Health Service. And that means that the government, the federal government and the state government own the dental profession. That's what the problem is.
And basically, of course, they control the dental schools. The average dentist doesn't really understand. Do you think there is any growing awareness on the part of our dentists of the danger? I know certainly some of them are backing away from mercury and fillings, but what about the danger of water fluoridation? Do you think any of the dentists are really understanding what's going on? Are we having impact in the dental profession?
We are, but we aren't. Is it courage is the thing that's lacking? Is the dentists are so afraid that the dental society will accuse them of being less than perfect or something like that. So they won't step up and tell what they really think.
Hold that. Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY. Give us a call if you have a question or comment. This is important. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest is Dr. David Kennedy, who we always enjoy having on. Well, what happened when you were back there in Maine talking to the dental hygienists? Did they understand what they were doing? Did they understand they were poisoning their patients?
Well, they did by the time I was done. When you talk to a large group of people, you don't want to immediately hit them in the face and say, by the way, you're poisoning your patient. So I started off with the story about how bacteria cause tooth decay and gum disease. And that, hygiene is the goddess of health. She's the lady that basically has saved more lives than all the doctors and surgeons on the planet, because cleanliness is what has reduced the enormous amount of infection and so forth that was in our society 150 years ago. And so I talked about hygiene, and I talked about preventive dentistry and how we can make people healthy. And after I got through explaining that, showing the microscopic picture of health versus disease and how they can use that in their own practices and so forth, then I went to talk about how you can kill that bug, and that, immediately they would reach for their favorite substance, fluoride, and that will actually kill the patient. So you don't want to kill the patient, you want to kill the germs. And I explained how to do that. And by the time I got done, that there were a lot of people that had changed their opinion. Whether or not, but remember, a hygienist is like a nurse. They're under the thumb of God. And so, the doctor God is going to tell them, oh, you can't do it that way. And so, the person that wasn't in the room is the person that really needs to get the education. And that the problem is I've talked to kids that just graduated from dental school. They don't know anything. They don't. They've got an ADA certified, accredited education, and they don't have the first clue that mercury's coming off fillings, fluoride's a poison, yada yada yada. So what are we doing? We're cranking out a bunch of molar mechanics, people that know how to fix teeth, kind of more or less, if you want to have your teeth ground on, but they don't know how to stop the disease, and they don't know how to prevent it. And so, I'm sorry, we've still got 1950 dentistry being taught in our supposed higher education. So I enjoyed talking to the hygienists. They were open, they were receptive, because that's what they're into. They're into prevention, they're into health, they're into helping the patient get well. The trouble is that they're under the thumb. And I'll tell you something that's horrible, that they have the right to practice independently in Maine. They can set up their own office like a barber and, hang a tooth out the door, and you can come in and get your teeth cleaned, which I herald. I mean, why aren't there one on every corner? It's a good thing. And what the dentists make them do is if they go into independent practice, they have to sign away their 4 years of education in hygiene school and give up their registered dental hygienist license, so they can never again practice with a dentist. They have to practice independently.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest today is certainly Dr. David Kennedy, who certainly has been on the front lines of this battle for many years, trying to educate people about, first of all, the fact that there was mercury certainly in the fillings and was poisoning the people. But even more than that, of course, the danger of water fluoridation. Certainly, if you're out there in the listening audience and you have a question or comment, why, we hope that you give us a call. Now, you have to understand that probably about 67% of the water in the United States is fluoridated, and 90% of that is fluoridated with hydrofluorosilicic acid, and basically this is far more dangerous than simply a sodium fluoride. And basically, of course, David was saying he actually spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to put a system into his home so he would be able to shower without being, of course, besieged with fluoride. What happened?
Well, I had a guy that said, I got this system, works for ever and ever. And I said, well, fine, let's put a gallon counter on it, and I'll measure it. And that it failed in 3 months. And that, we need to do it this way. And so they reconstituted. He said, San Diego has such hard water, blah, blah, blah. And so they redid it, and it failed again. So, we keep doing it. I mean, we got better the second time. We got twice as many gallons. But it's almost impossible to take this stuff out of the water once it's in. And that's the real tragedy of the deal. But think about it. What if you have your kids in a swimming pool in the summer? They're sitting soaking in this stuff. It goes right through the skin. What if you like to swim as an exercise? Well, it goes right through your skin. What if you have a hot tub and you like to have a cocktail in the evening and sit there and enjoy the sunset? Oh, it goes right through your skin. So when you put something in the water, what if you want to drink a beer? Well, when you put something in the water, the beer company is going to use the tap water to make a beverage, and so it ends up in Coca-Cola, soda pop. Somebody sent me an email the other day that I told them how to buy the little tester. It's only $300 or $400, and that they started measuring cereals because Wheaties and sugar puffs and Post Toasties and all these things have fluoride in it. Why? Because they're made in fluoridated communities, and that the fluoride stays in the dehydrated product. So, the cereals are basically grains that are ground up and made into little flakes or whatever you're eating, and then they dehydrate it. They take the water away. That leaves the fluoride behind. So we find 10 times more fluoride in the cereal than was in the water that was used to make it. And so everything that's instant or out of a box or a can is going to have fluoride in it. And that's the problem when you put chemicals in the water supply that A, don't leave, and B, harm the population. So, they say, there's a bone cancer rate that's pretty high in non-fluoride areas, too. And that's true. But it's not high in areas of the world that don't have fluoride exposure. It's high in areas that do have fluoride exposure. That's the problem. And why bone? Because bone is where fluoride accumulates. And your body has no use for fluoride, so it parks in the bone. So you end up with joints that go bad. President Bush, past President Bush, had a knee replaced the other day. Why? Washington, D.C. is fluoridated, so they make him coffee with the D.C. water. He's in Texas. Texas has a lot of fluoride in the water, natural fluoride. No amount of fluoride is good for you.
All right, let's go to Tim, who's calling us from Albany, New York. Hi, Tim. I have a question or comment for our guest.
Yes, hi, how you doing? The question is, does reverse osmosis, like the water machines that they have in supermarkets and things that go through, like a 5-step filtration plus the reverse osmosis, will that take the fluoride out?
No, and yes, it'll lower it, and it does not take it all out. And the trouble is that there are a huge number of sources of exposure other than the water you drink, and that's the problem. It's not your lips, it's your shower, it's your coffee, it's your if you have eat spaghetti out at an Italian restaurant, you're going to get fluoride in everything you eat. So as long as you allow, and you sit back and say, well, I'm going to protect myself, as long as you allow the program to continue, where we adulterate the water with chemicals, then you're going to basically be living in a country that has poisoned children.
And Tim, basically, because we're poisoning our kids, they know what they're doing. This is not imaginary. This is real. And we have 4 tape sets. You can call us at 1-800-544-8927. We get our sport tape set on fluoride. We've got DVDs on fluoride. We've got books on fluoride. You must understand this is being totally suppressed because the media is controlled. Do you listen to our program regularly?
Yes, I also had a quick question for you. Maybe it'll have to be after the break.
Hold that thought. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Hang on. Tim, you go right ahead. Did you have a question for our guest, Dr. David Kennedy?
Yes, I was wondering if the fluoride pills that they give or used to give kids, what are the long-term effects of those? I used to take those, actually. My parents would give me the fluoride vitamins.
Yeah, the long-term effects of fluoride pills are very similar to drinking the fluoride in the water. It basically, fluoride is a cumulative poison, so it accumulates in the bones. And that is why, in my opinion, we have all these joints that are going bad, is because the bones are poisoned. So, that is not, the FDA is the regulatory agency of the United States government that's supposed to regulate drugs. Fluoride, like you took as a child, as a pill, is a drug. And the congressional investigation of 2000, my friend Jeff Green held, there was a number of questions. Is fluoride a drug? Yes, it is. Has any fluoride substance intended to be ingested been approved by the FDA? No. And that in 1975, all 36 applications were rejected for fluoride vitamins. So what you were given was a drug that the FDA said there was no evidence of effectiveness. And so why were you given that? You're given that because of politics. It's got nothing to do with making your teeth strong or anything like that. It had to do with pharmaceutical industry making huge amounts of money. Billions of dollars have been spent on these useless tablets, and that it ends up costing hundreds of billions of dollars in medical treatments later in life. You know, because you didn't fall over dead when you took the pill, is, oh, well, it's okay. No. What if you take it when you're 4, and then when you're 84, your knees are, bone on bone? That is not acceptable, in my opinion. So we have laws and regulations. The FDA has been petitioned, I think, 6 times, and they keep winning because either people die, John Yamayanis passed away, there was John V. Kelly got voted out of office, and so all these petitions end up falling by the wayside because the people we're paying to regulate drugs do what they can to stall beyond the life expectancy of a normal human being.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back here in just a moment with Dr. Kennedy. Well, this is Dr. Stan. We have Tim calling from Albany, New York, asking about fluoridated medicines. And are they safe? Well, of course, David's pointing out this. That basically, we're being given fluoride at every turn. People are making a lot of money on this, and it's doing irreparable harm. Tim, anything else you wanted to ask before we let you go?
Well, from listening to your program about guests and your comments about fluoride, Dr. Stan, so I guess there's a lot of it's about dumbing down, right?
Well, first of all, these things are going on because we have been dumbed down, but they're destroying our minds. They're destroying the minds of our children. They're destroying our health. And they know what they're doing. They are evil and wicked people. Go ahead.
So the only other question I have tonight, maybe your guests would know, because we were talking about, the reverse osmosis trying to take out the fluoride, and he said that it would just be reduced. But I've also heard that the reverse osmosis, if you drink, a lot of that water and stuff, that it can leach the calcium and minerals out of your bones and teeth. I don't know if your guests would know about that.
That's not correct. That if you, I drink distilled water, and my joints are better now than they were when I started drinking distilled water. So, the distilled water has no fluoride in it. So rainwater, unless you live near a cement factory or something like that, has no fluoride in it. And if you think about it, humans for millions of years drank water that was on the surface. Surface water is low in fluoride. It's well water? Is it like in Colorado where there's decomposed granite in the soil that is high in fluoride? So basically the human being evolved over millions to drink surface water, because you're not going to go dig a hole in the ground until you invent a shovel.
Well, basically, David, we have a well. It's about 160 feet here in California. Should we be concerned about the contamination of that oil, of that well?
Not unless you're up the valley in Monterey where the children got poisoned at the trailer park.
No.
Is it the earth crust? Looks like a fudge ripple. Remember the ice cream where they put fudge in it, and there was a little layer here and a little layer there, but it wasn't the whole thing? And that's what the Earth's crust looked like. So what you have to do is drill a well and then measure it, and then, because you might run into I was surprised that there was high fluoride in Monterey, but there was, and that there was high fluoride in Dighton, Kansas, where my uncle was raised, and but that's the decomposed granite from the Rocky Mountains. So there are little pockets of fluoride around on the planet, and they poison the people that live in that area. But it's not universal. Generally, if it comes out of the sky in the form of rain, it's low in fluoride, unless you're in China where it's polluted, or near a cement factory or something. So yes, I'd drill a well and measure it. That's what I tell people. It's not that hard to measure fluoride.
All right, fine. Thank you very much. Anything else, Tim, before we let you go?
So I guess the reverse osmosis, water and the stuff that goes through, like a 5-step filtration process, including that, it's fine. It's just very pure.
Better than drinking the tap water by a long shot.
Okay,
yeah, so
fine.
It's no problem.
Thanks so very much, Tim. Our telephone numbers again is 1-888-888-24-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. But understand, ladies and gentlemen, that they're poisoning the American people. They're poisoning our children, and they know exactly what they're doing. And if you have the courage to stand up and try to get the information out, you'll be viciously attacked and vilified. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's all they do, though, that they're cowards. All it does is take a little courage to stand up. As a dentist, I always opposed, from the early 80s on, mercury and fluoride, and that because I used science to oppose it, they would not counterattack. They say, "Oh, he's a nut. He thinks mercury's bad." Well, I got a dictionary, and so it doesn't really. I mean, yeah, they may attack. Yeah, so what? I mean, sticks and stones may break my bones, but that's all they do. They don't have any science to support their point of view. They have gobs of industry. They have lots of people that will endorse it, but endorsement is not the same as science. Science has numbers, data, numbers. They've got research, and so what they do is even this choice study, broad-bent, dummied up, a completely stupid study of just a few children, and said, "See, it didn't harm them." Well, yeah, but he didn't control for any of the available. He didn't even control whether they, like your caller, took fluoride tablets. If you live in a fluoride community and you drink the water, is that any different than living in a non-fluoride community and taking fluoride tablets? I don't think so. And so he didn't even control for that. He didn't even separate the two groups. So that's what they do. They call it a dummied up study. And it's not a valid study by anybody's study, but you can get it published in all the dental journals because they don't know the difference between a good study and a bad study. They just publish anything that supports their opinion. And that's basically what Socrates said brings evil into society, is opinions.
Well, let me just point out that we have certainly, I think, 2 or 3 DVDs, which were made by a fellow named Dr. David Kennedy.
He's a great guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure is. And these are excellent. They're available through Radio Liberty. You need to get these DVDs. You need to watch them, and you need to get the information out. And then, of course, we have an excellent 4-CD set on water fluoridation. We have my talk I've given on water fluoridation and population control. They know exactly what they're doing. Certainly, we have our 4-CD, our DVD on Agenda 21, the Covert Plan, where we get into water fluoridation. All of this information is readily available by calling 1-800-544-8927. 1-800-544-8927. So if you need information, give us a call, but understand they're poisoning your children, they're poisoning your grandchildren. Well, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. What sort of response has there been from across America with this new study coming out of Harvard?
Well, it caused a lot of people to take another double look because who are the authors? And it's funny. You can have the best data in the world, but if the author is not somebody who's well known, then they say, well, it's just that unknown author. But Choi is a Chinese lady. Xin Guifan is the fellow that invited me to China back in 1999 to make the video or documentary called China's Battle with Crippling Water. It's on my YouTube channel. And then Dr. Granjin, who is well known as a researcher in mercury and how it damages children's brains. And so Dr. Granjin coined the term chemical brain drain, and that it's not one thing. It's the combination of mercury fillings in the children's teeth, mercury in vaccines, fluoride in the water, silicofluoride in the water, fluoride-releasing fillings, fluoride-releasing drugs, fluoride-releasing drops and tablets, et cetera, and all of these things are basically making. They've even had to change the standards for the SAT test and lower it so that the kids can get in college because they are not scoring as good as their grandparents did. What does that tell you? Are we going to be able to invent the next Google engine or the next rocket to the moon or whatever? No, they can't even figure out how to get to the 7-Eleven. So it's damaging our country. It's damaging the future of the world, really. If we're the engine that drives the world forward, that they're intentionally poisoning this engine.
They absolutely are. David, how can people get to your website and get your information?
Well, my website is YouTube is David Kennedy DDS. If you put in David Kennedy with two N's and DDS, Dog Sierra, that like a dentist, that you've got my YouTube. I've got 35 programs there. You can go to my new feature-length documentary. It's called FLUORIDEGATE, and it's actually not about fluoride. It's about the government cover-up of the problem. In 1989, they showed that fluoride caused cancer, and so they spent the next 20 years damning the poor guy that discovered that. So his crime was writing a memo that says, "It's the first time in my experience that rats were exposed to less than humans are." So anyway, that's FLUORIDEGATE. It's an interesting documentary, and I've actually I'm getting better acclaim in Europe than I am in the United States.
Well, basically, unfortunately, they have certainly much less media control in Europe than they have here. Let's go to Lawrence, who's calling us from Santa Cruz. Sydney, Lawrence, do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yes, I do. Good evening, gentlemen. I was wondering if distilling water bypasses or takes out the fluoride.
Distilling water removes 100% of the oils, the pesticides, the lead, the heavy metals, and the fluoride that's in the water. When you end up with distilled water, if you do a double distilled water and then run it through a carbon filter, when you're all done, then you end up with H2O, which is basically what I think you should be drinking. I have a distiller in my house that provides water in all of the locations where you'd need to cook or prepare foods or drink. And there are people who say, "Oh, distilled water, blah, blah, blah." Show me the data. There is no research showing that drinking distilled water is harmful to you at all.
And let me point out, Lawrence, here in Santa Cruz, why we do not have a fluoride added to the water, and the one reason is because the people like myself on the right made common cause with people on the left and fought the establishment, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, and the people who control our government, and we fought them to a standstill, so we do not have fluoridated water. We got a lot to be thankful for. Go ahead.
Indeed. Well, that's what I was wanting to know. I've been always interested in distilled water. I've been drinking it most of my life here.
Okay, well, you keep right on drinking it, and thanks very much. For anything else you want to say before we let you go?
No, thank you very much.
God bless.
Thanks for calling.
Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. And it's interesting to notice that they're much more concerned about this over in Europe. But, of course, we're destroying the very heart and soul and minds of our children and our grandchildren. And the average individual could not believe anything could be this evil, but it really is. Well, David, we've got about 5 minutes for you to wrap up the program. You go right ahead.
Well, let me first thank you for sharing your information with your listeners. Is it that it's because of people like you that I think the tide is turning? Is it we need to keep pushing at the wheel because there's forces of evil are pushing the other way. But that because of your programs, Dr. Stan, and your DVDs and such, that the public is becoming more and more aware of the fact that you cannot trust the information that comes out of industry-controlled government agencies. And that's what the FDA is. It's a government agency that's controlled by the industry they're supposed to regulate. And I have lots of faith in the American people. They're good people, they love their children, and that they will do what they can to make this country strong. And that's who I'm talking to. I could care less about whether or not it's recommended by the FDA or the ADA or some dumb DA. It doesn't make any difference to me. It makes difference is that if it's harming the children, they need to stop it. It's if I were sitting out on the front of my house beating on a baby in a carriage with a metal rod, that every neighbor in the house around me would come out and knock me down to the ground and take that stick away from me, perhaps hit me with the stick. That's no different than what the government is doing to every child in this country, is that by putting a chemical in the water it is damaging that child. No different than some bum with a stick banging on the baby's carriage. It is just as harmful, if not more so. And so people need to find into their hearts a little courage, stand up, tell the truth, and say, if I don't want it in my water, stop it. And that's what I'm calling on them to do, is stand up and protect your country.
Hey, we've got Kurt calling from Monterey. Hi, Kurt. How are you doing?
Fine. I assume...
Is this the Kurt who used to be over here in Santa Cruz many years ago?
Sure is.
Okay, go right ahead.
In Santa Cruz, I enjoyed non-fluoridated water, but now that I'm in Monterey and Salinas, I assume I'm getting fluoride down here, right?
No.
I'm not certain. I think
Monterey hasn't fluoridated yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, wonderful. What about Salinas?
I don't know.
Okay. That's great. Well, thank you.
Anything else you want to know?
Well, yeah, if I'm on the road and I stop to get water someplace,
assume it's
is there safe bottled water if they don't have distilled water? Is there safe bottled water to get that isn't somebody else's fluoridated tap water?
Yeah, stuff from France, Evian.
Okay, from France.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
Huh?
Okay, fine. We'll go right ahead, David. And
I think I said what I need to say. Is that just tell your listeners to reach into their hearts and say, what am I going to do for my country today? Figure out some way you can bother the people that are putting the fluoride in there, and to bother them by write them a letter. If you write your city council person, say, I'm sensitive to fluoride. I don't want it in my water. How can I avoid it? Let them answer that question.
And ladies and gentlemen, my suggestion is just ask people, why are they fluoridating the water when fluoride's a deadly poison? Why are they fluoridating the water all across the country when all the scientific studies show that it hurts children? Ask 4 or 5 people every single day that question, and if they give you a blank answer, tell them where to go on the internet to find the answers to that. And as they begin to understand that there is an organized effort to poison our children, I would hope that more and more people would join us in this epic struggle. Parting thought, you've got about 2 minutes to wrap up the program for us.
Parting thought is that we need to work together to make this happen, and that there are videos that you've got available, Dr. Stan. The Fluoride Gate is available on the internet, or you can buy DVDs and send them out to all your relatives and friends, and if you got grandchildren, send it to them. These are powerful tools. I wrote a book on the subject, but most people can't read. Well, why can't they read? I don't know, but it takes time. But the video is much easier to cover the topic. Same information in a very short amount of time. So basically the information that I'm sharing with the public is available on videos, and I don't make any money from it because I'm doing it because I think it's my obligation. And I really, really appreciate you having me on the program, Stan, so that we can share with your listeners what we need to do to make our country stronger and healthier. And
we're going to continue doing this as long as God gives us the breath and the ability to do it. Our guest has been Dr. David Kennedy. Dr. David Kennedy, go up on the internet. You can find his material. If you'd like to get his DVDs, call us at 1-800-544-8927. 1-800-544-8927. Could it really be true that they're poisoning us? Absolutely. What are you going to do about it? Well, if you do nothing, you'll have nobody to complain about when we lose America. Good night, David. God bless. We'll talk to you real soon.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Stan. Good night.
Well, this is Dr. Stan back here, and certainly we hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dr. David Kennedy. We do carry his DVDs. We carry his book. We have a 4-CD set on this. We have a great deal of information on this in my talk on Agenda 21 of the Covert Plan. So basically, give us a call at 1-800-544-8927. We have a whole stable full of books on water fluoridation. And what you want to do is just start asking people as you meet them, why are they poisoning our water? And most people look at you a little surprised, and then just talk to them very, very briefly about the danger of water fluoridation and suggest that they tell others about this and tell them where they can get the information on this. But fortunately, you can go up on the internet, you can find this latest Harvard study, and ask them if that's really true. Why wasn't this on the front page of your local newspaper pointing out that they're poisoning your children and your grandchildren? We need a coordinated effort, and we need you involved. I can only reach a certain number of people with our radio stations, and even though we do 5 hours of talk radio a day, 5 days a week, why we can't reach the number of people, but you can, and the people that you can talk to can. And so join us in this epic struggle to try to educate people. And of course, they poison us in so many ways, certainly by the lead, certainly that's in the hydrofluorosilicic acid that so many of the children are taking, certainly the mercury in the fillings, certainly the poisons in the coloring and various substances in our food supply, the bisphenol, which is used to line every tin can, every tin can in America contains bisphenol, which is a poison, and we could go down the line with certainly all the other things that they're doing, GMO foods. But we need your help, and you can actually reach people just by asking them questions, try to get them to read, try to get them to think, try to get them to get up on the internet and tell them, look, the information is there, but you're never going to hear about it because of the degree of control that exists today, or what the American people think and believe. Now, believe me, some people will sort of scoff at you, but there are others who increasing numbers know that something's wrong. This latest article, it's just this last week in Newsweek magazine, about conspiracies. You can find it on the internet. And when they did a poll of intelligent people, they found that 23% believe suddenly that there is a conspiracy of some sort. Now, this is the time when I need to remind you that my ministry, Radio Liberty, is primarily listener-supported, and we are dependent upon those of you who listen to our programs to help us as we reach out across America 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, to try to educate people. And we do have listeners not only across America, but we found out just today the number of people we have over there in England, in Birmingham, who listen to our programs there. But we need your help so we can continue doing what we're doing. Quite frankly, we need financial support, and so you can join the Radio Liberty family of supporters. You can certainly buy the books that we offer, the CD sets we offer, the items. You can find them on the internet at radioliberty.com. That's radioliberty.com. If you'd like to get a free catalog, give us a call at 1-800-544-8927. I said that's 1-800-544-8927. But we need, of course, you to and your family to join together with us in this epic struggle. If you're not in a position to help us financially, then we ask you to pray for America. We ask you to pray for revival. We ask you to pray for our leaders and our ministers, but please certainly pray for my ministry, Radio Liberty, for our provision and protection, because we're involved in an epic struggle for the souls of men and the survival of Christian civilization. And again, our number is 1-800-544-8927. I will be back, hopefully, with you tomorrow evening at the same time. Until then, may the Lord be with you.